So Trump, as you know, keeps going after Hillary, calling her, among other things, crooked. Says she's a liar. He calls the Clinton Foundation corrupt. But I want you to check out what the Washington Post said in a recent piece. It's called Trump's History of Corruption is Mind-Boggling. So why is Clinton supposedly the corrupt one when matched head-to-head? Now, the Post piece contains a long list of things that it considers corrupt. It's too long, trust me, to read. It'll take probably a half an hour, but I'll get into a couple of them. Some doozies including the casino bankruptcies that left investors holding the bag while Trump pocketed their very money. His habit of refusing to pay contractors. Trump University, of course, now the subject of several lawsuits, and also Trump's history of facing housing discrimination charges, and also his connection with mob figures in New York's construction industry. And trust me, I can go on. But our show's only an hour long, so no time to cover it all. But nonetheless here, you look at the flip side. Watchdog group called Charity Navigator. Those are the people, if you ever want to give money, I suggest, I'm not a stakeholder in it, you go there to see how much of every dollar you give will actually go to whatever charity you're looking at versus how much the administration will take off the top. Anyway, you go to this site. It gave the Clinton Foundation its highest rating, this even higher than the Red Cross, for example, after looking at the charity's finances. But we should note that that group has ties to the Clinton Foundation, as it has participated in several of the global initiatives of the group. For its part, Charity Navigator's head said had nothing to do with the 4-star rating. Plus, the Clinton Foundation, whatever you think, and I certainly think they could have done this a lot better than they did in terms of that line between the foundation and the State Department, but nonetheless, I don't think anybody's going to debate they do a lot of good in the world. Just talk to George Herbert Walker Bush here. That includes providing low-cost AIDS drugs to at least 9 million people and much more. Again, they said one thing when she was being confirmed at State, and they did another thing, so I'm not defending it. But when you match the two human beings side by side as to who has done more for the public good, with some self-service, with self-interest involved, I don't debate it, versus the other one, again, just the two of them, it's really not a point of comparison going from when they got out of college to where they are in life. But nonetheless, it's a false equivalent, you know? And the two of them, you know, one, hey, he might be smarmy, but the other one's crooked. He's crooked because we say she's crooked.
I think it is this false equivalence.
And don't go blaming the media on this one. Go ahead.
I'm not blaming any media. I'm just saying this idea that somehow they have these equal, you know, shortcomings is completely false here. Particularly with the foundation, there has been no evidence of anything that happened as a result of interference by someone on behalf of the Clinton Foundation. And no finding of wrongdoing. I mean,
it was dumb, though, what they did.
I think there were serious perception problems that have been problems for the Clintons, and I understand people's frustration with that. But at the end of the day, weigh it against the money he gave to Pam Biondi and the fact that there's no lawsuit against the Trump University.
Two different states
Florida
had
AG.
three states, but had separate investigations, or at least preliminary investigations. Forget what Schneiderman's doing in New York. And in both cases, in Florida and in Texas, contributions, checks written by Donald Trump, and magically, internally in those DA offices, they didn't pursue criminal investigations against Trump University, even though staffers, ADAs, all thought that it certainly merited an investigation. But Giancarlo, and I put this to you for a second, George W. Bush did a fantastic job, or his handlers did, when they talked about the military records of him and John Kerry. And by the time we got to the election, swift boating was a formal verb in this country, and people thought, yeah, Kerry somehow, some way manufactured a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Meanwhile, we know about the record in the National Guard for George Bush. This is not the first time it's happened, but it's been done in such a non-professional way by Trump, and it still worked. That, to me, do you attribute it more that the Clintons carry so much baggage, or that he's such a good practitioner of it?
No, it's the former, in my opinion. And look, I would say this. There is a difference between engaging in shady business practices, which it appears Mr. Trump has throughout his career, and a pattern that the Clintons have adopted of subverting American institutions for their will and benefit. We'll pile on the media now again for one more second, but when we talk about the email scandal, it all comes down to one fundamental thing, and for whatever reason, no one wants to draw a clear and bright and distinct line. Hillary Clinton had a private email server specifically to avoid the kind of scrutiny that the FBI investigation has now uncovered, which is, if they didn't, and to me it's still an open question, cross the line with regard to Clinton private dealings, inclusive of the foundation, and her work as Secretary of State, then she walked so closely up to the line that if her shoe was the same color as the line, you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. That's why she had a private email server. There's no mystery there. That is the reason.
There is an important point in this. And the important point is, and Comey was very critical in certain elements, but he said, and there was unanimity within the FBI to not pursue criminal charges against him. You can't leave that part out of the story.
Sure you can, for a specific reason. James Comey, who apparently and I'm no expert, but his personal record is unimpeachable, has a history of investigating public servants, and when he uncovers wrongdoing, there's a very specific one that we'll talk about, he decides that politics will, in fact, play a role in the outcome. No, I'm not.
That's not fair.
One word, two words. Elliot Spitzer. Was he not the U.S. attorney who prosecuted Elliot Spitzer?
Okay.
Elliot Spitzer did not serve 1 day of jail time. Elliot Spitzer broke multiple laws. And the reason why he didn't was because the U.S. attorney came to the conclusion that losing your seat as governor was punishment enough. And I'm willing to bet that James Comey's calculation was, if anyone at this table had done the same thing that she had done as Secretary of State, you better believe they would have been prosecuted.
Come on,
but because she was the Democratic nominee for
I'm so
president,
happy Elliot Spitzer got thrown out on his keister. But do you think anybody else who solicited a hooker like he did would have been thrown in jail?
But it wasn't just that. There
That
was
wasn't
money.
just the issue.
There was
state
There
lines.
were state lines.
Yeah.
He flew her to Puerto
Here's
Rico.
my only point, and I'm sorry it's taken me too long to get there. I apologize. But my point is, Comey clearly felt that subverting the will of the Democratic primary voter to toss out their nominee, that punishment did not fit the crime. Not that she was not worthy of
Well, I'm going to file criminal charges because you have hijacked
convinced
this
of that.
segment here. Yes. But my point is this. I think if you ask 10 sober-minded people, who's shadier between these two people, given their lifetime of work? And do I think, please, that the Clintons haven't twisted, contorted, and done more than that for rules? At the end of the day, what is the Clinton Foundation? What have they done for this world? Versus what has Trump, you and everything else done for one person, Donald Trump? This thing to me is not complicated, but yet it's now so muddied out there that they're both crooks. So take your best shot guessing who gets elected. And that's not fair, is my point. I mean, it's fair. It's politics. It's the real world. But it's not accurate. Okay, and that's to me, you know, you work for the Children's Defense Fund, you do all those things. That's different than what he has put his life. And I'm a capitalist, but it is a lot of scummy stuff, year after year after year that he's done. He's screwed over a lot of people. It's not the same thing when you match up their bios, is my point.
You're right on. I mean, I read that Washington Post piece about him, and it was long and authoritative, and it just kept going and going and going. I think what's going on, though, is that there's a history with the Clintons, and people are sort of judging them by their entire history, where they're not judging Donald Trump by his entire history. I think people are sort of fed up, and his supporters are saying, we're with him. Okay, they agree with the whole
whatever you want.
Tell us whatever
right.
you want. We've seen it throughout the entire campaign. They're with him, and it's not fair. It's the way it is, and I think Hillary Clinton has to get past that, and she's got to drive home that it is a false.
Yeah, but to me, it's at 5 to 7%, Shelley. It's not the 40%. He's right. Doesn't matter. As he said, Trump said, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, they're not going to arrest me. He's probably right. I mean, he's not. They'll still vote for him. But that 5 to 7%, depending on what Johnson, Stein, and the rest actually do, right? What's it take for them to say, I don't love either one of them, but I don't trust that guy with the launch codes, and I don't like that guy, even more than I don't like her?
Well, I think that may come out in the debate, that sentiment that you've described, which is he's quick, he's insulting, his approach will not be presidential, and I think people will take that away. I like what he says, he speaks the truth, all those things they want to say, he's plain spoken. they're nervous about him, and they're going to continue to be nervous about him. He's not going to show the kind of presidential stature that I think Americans of all stripes demand of their commander-in-chief.
And I got to hit a breakdown. Do you think the Trump we get in Hofstra is sober, calm-minded, trying to look presidential? Or do you think he tries to rip her a new one like we've seen him throughout the last year?
He doesn't try and rip her, quote your words, a new one. The moderators, the moderators will be handcuffed because I'm sure it was negotiated how many follow-up questions you can ask. So they will be, my prediction, completely handcuffed. He's going to be statesmanlike, but one of the reasons why he gets away, that Trump personality, and it's going to be on full display. And whether you like it or whether we like it or not, there's some in the country that love that person.
All right, coming up next, I got to hit this one. This probably everybody can agree on. Trouble for Bill de Blasio. Now, first we saw, I know, it does sound familiar, I grant you. First we saw just deadly violence again at that celebration in Brooklyn. And then there's an anti-de Blasio group releasing an attack ad skewering the mayor, and that's on top of some plunging poll numbers here. He's an interesting spot. We'll talk about the mayor after this.